I'm Mark Turner, president of the Gilroy Chamber of Commerce, and we are doing a panel discussion with three experts in the landscape and design field. We know that a lot of people are doing landscape work now during this time, this COVID crisis, and so we wanted to make sure to provide some information that might be helpful to those do-it-yourself weekend warriors. And so we have with us Ryan Dinsmore from Alpine Landscapes, Greg Bozzo from GB Landscaping Services, and Karen Aitken from Aitken Associates Landscape Architects. So all three of you, welcome. Thank you for being here with us, and we'll jump into the questions here. The question I have, and this is, what suggestions do you have for the do-it-yourself weekend warrior? In other words, what are some do's and don'ts people should be thinking about when they do a landscape project? Greg, let's go to you first.
Well, one of the first things I would suggest is because landscape trade is one of the more highly laborious trades, and even more so in areas that we live in with our hard clay soils, is that sometimes there seems to be an impression given through the marketing, the do-it-yourself is equivalent to being easy. And the first thing you need to understand that landscaping oftentimes is not easy. It's hard work and it's highly laborious. So start to think that it is a long-term project. It cannot be done quickly, and most likely it will not be easy. And if it is easy and it is done quickly, it most likely will not last. So that's one way to start off with your project. And another thing I would add is something that we all get questions about all the time are trees. Evergreen trees versus deciduous trees. There seems to be a perception that deciduous trees are the only ones that drop their leaves, and it sometimes is actually the contrary. Deciduous trees drop their leaves once a year, and evergreen trees often drop leaves slowly throughout the entire year. So some people are often looking for a tree or a plant that doesn't drop leaves. That does not exist. So keep that in mind when you're selecting your trees.
Okay, good advice. Thank you, Greg. Ryan, how about you?
I agree with everything Greg said. What I'll add for the weekend warriors is research the plants that you want to use. More often than not, you get a homeowner that will go down to a Home Depot or a local nursery and say, oh, that's a beautiful flower. I want to take it and go plant it, without doing any research of soil types, exposure, how big it will get. And you don't necessarily have to contact the landscape contractor to figure this information out. There's a lot of information on the web. If you Google the plant, there's websites out there that'll tell you if it's a sunshade plant, the soil types, how much water. So that's one of my recommendations. And what weekend warriors can do is, they can plant the plants, but it's always important to plant them at the right depth. More often than not, we see plants that are planted too low, or the worst, most detrimental thing you can do to plants is overwater. Homeowners will see yellowing of flowers and think, oh, my plants, they're not getting enough water, and they'll continue to overwater. And that's one thing that really hurts a landscape.
Got it. Okay, good advice. Karen, what would you recommend as far as do's and don'ts with
great
landscape?
points, from Greg and Ryan. What I might add, if you're thinking you've just got a Saturday and Sunday to goof around in your garden, there's two approaches. One, you may know you want to put in a vegetable garden, a rose garden, a flower garden, you don't know where to put it. Or the other is you've got a corner of your yard, you don't know what to do with it. So it's just a matter of doing a little research. So you might take Saturday morning to really look at your space, contemplate what you want to do, run to the local nurseries to see what's available, and at the same time doing a little online research. So as the fellows were mentioning, there are a couple of great websites to look at. There's, of course, Pinterest always, and there's house.com, which is gobs of articles, plant photos, great professional advice. And yet another website that's great for plants is called plantfinder.com. And on that, it will give lots of planting information and plant palettes. So if you wanted to do a hummingbird garden, a rose garden, a drought tolerant garden, deer garden, they will give you a selection of plants that you could go shopping for. And so often, as Greg and Ryan both mentioned, folks don't think about all the underground that goes into preparing a garden. It's not just the cute flowers on top, but there's the soil to consider, the drainage, the irrigation. Those will take a day into themselves just to prepare for.
Okay.
So I say not biting off more than you can chew. A little bit of a garden on a weekend.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. I appreciate that. As far as the Karen, we'll stay with you on this. As far as the what some people should be thinking about, what should they be thinking about as they put together a plan for their landscape project?
Oh, I'd start with a wish list. You just start to brainstorm for yourself and say, in my dream space in the backyard, where would I like to sit? Where are the great sun spots, the shade spots? Do I like to entertain a lot? Might I like a spot for a shade cover or a fire pit? And start to compartmentalize your garden a little bit. And a plan's always a great thing, of course. So even if it's a little doodly sketch and maybe you make a dimension plan so that you can really start to quantify how much you need to buy of everything. A master plan, that's the big deal.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, for you as someone who would be maybe someone to implement a plan, what are some of the challenges you see that whether it goes from design to implementation, what are some of the challenges that exist there?
I agree with Karen, and what I could add to that is, the space you have, again, the plants you choose, and what do you want the space to look like in 5 years, 10 years, the tree selection. Is it a young couple that just bought their first home and they want to put in a paver patio, but they're going to plan on having kids down the road? Any backyard landscape project is a big investment. And then if you expect to change it again in 5 to 10 years, you may want to take that into consideration for what you do for your first landscape project. And there's a lot of tract homes being built right now, and a lot of younger people buying them, and they come with a blank slate and no backyard. So it's important to take those into considerations of your first landscape and what changes will you make down the road.
All right, thank you, Greg. The question was, what should people think about as they develop a plan for a landscape project?
When I'm talking to people, I always ask them to remind themselves that when they're planning their backyards, that they need to think of what are the practical needs and what are the aesthetic needs. So what I mean by that is sometimes, especially of the online world that we live in, and Pinterest and House and things like that, people see these pictures and they love the aesthetics, but it may not meet the practical needs of their yard. For example, if they have a big dog and they also want a huge flowering garden and a beautiful green lawn, that may be a conflict. So they have to determine what the priorities are in their yard. Again, what are the practical needs and what are the aesthetic needs? Sometimes they complement each other, but sometimes they do not, and you have to choose one over the other.
Got it. Thank you very much. Good advice. Well, we're going to be right back. This ends our first segment. We'll be right back with you after just a brief break here. Thanks so much.